And we're all counting down to 2020 as it is. And we also do know that, well, we're telling you early on about how, well, back in 1995 and the early years of the National Development Planning Commission, we said we're going to have a Vision 2020. Subsequently, we had that. It was supposed to be an indispensable part of our own strategy of planning and development, not only in contemporary Africa, but also beyond the frontiers of Africa. Now, we do know that at the time, many countries such as China, Singapore, and Sri Lanka were just emerging, and they have attained commendable development partly due to well-articulated and effectively implemented national visions. For example, you take China, they have the Belt and Road Initiative, and that now is linking various countries on various continents to their development. You get to find very virtual lines of links or roads that are linking the development of China to main China and connecting it to the rest of the world. And just yesterday, for example, there was this big railway initiative, as was also launched by President Putin of Russia. But it's telling you, Trump is doing something in his world, making sure that he's putting America first. The UK just exited from EU because they also want to assert themselves. What about Africa? We have the youngest population. When it comes to Ghana, our population is still youthful. Now, back in the day, in the 90s, we had what we call Vision 2020. We're told that it's supposed to be making sure that we achieve national vision that should be characterized by unwavering purpose and commitment. Leadership support was also needed, communication and information management skills, etc. But how should that vision needed to be achieved? Now, we discarded Vision 2020 for whether good or bad reasons. Now, it would have been achieved through a well-coordinated medium-term program. Subsequently, after that, we had other plans supposed to have been ending 2015. Then we had a 40-year development plan that was subsequently finished, as we're told, by 2017, but just hasn't gotten off the table. Why is that? Why don't we have a development plan? What happened to Vision 2020? We decided to bring someone who had been part of the National Development Planning Commission, and then also a development expert, and Kenneth Owusu is right here. Good morning to you, sir.
Good morning, Roland.
Yeah, and when I saw you, I remembered that stakeholder engagement we had with some top media personalities at the time. You tried to explain what the 40-year development plan, etc., was for us. But at the end of the day, we do know that the National Development Plan takes its position in our development through an act of parliament, because the Constitution in Article 86, 87 also states that we needed to have this. So we have it. Vision 2020 and what the National Development Planning Commission needed to be doing. Was that something just we dreamt about and it was not far-reaching enough? What happened to it?
Thank you, Roland. Let me say good morning to your viewers. It's a pleasure to be here. I get animated anytime I get to talk about development because it's what I do, what I dream. I dream about. Colleagues that has worked with me say that you have brainwaves when you sleep on development. And rightly so, because I have a firm belief that there's no alternative to development planning. Whoever is out there who is dreaming that planning is gone need to revise their notes, because, I mean, with your intro, all the things that you see happen in Russia, happen in China, happen in Turkey, are things that had been planned and well executed. Every little step they take today is something that they've talked about, and they've put it on paper, and they're executing it. So I think this country need to rethink about ourselves and begin to think about planning for the future. I'm happy you are talking about Vision 2020. It's virtually like 25 years anniversary next year.
Yes.
Yeah, when we talked about what do you call Vision 2020. And the essence of that was to say that, okay, we want to reach a certain goal. In fact, the main objective of the Vision 2020, or the goal, was to become a middle income by 2020. That was the main objective. So what were the underpinnings? So it spells out what we need to do spatial economy and all that. So, and the way the documents were structured was that it's not like you're going to have a 25 years going, but it was going to be cut into pieces. So if you look at it, what happened is that they have what they call first step, which is 2020 first step. So after the main document, 25 years is developed, they cut the first 5 years that needed to be implemented. And it was supposed to end at 2000. Okay. After the first step, that is being implemented, the first step, we didn't proceed in implementing the rest for a number of reasons. One of the reasons was that the environment at that time changed. You know, assessment at that time showed that most of the basic assumption underlying the document has changed. But the microenvironment has changed, and therefore it needed to be reviewed going forward. But most important or dramatic event that changed the course of that was Ghana's decision to go for HIPIC. Okay, because the HIPIC has its own requirements. You're supposed to provide a poverty reduction strategy document, and which has its own format and specification. So it was as if to say that, okay, hold on, clean your house, fix it before you go on. So that was what changed the course of Vision 2020 at that time. But subsequently to that, we've made a couple of attempts to bring our path back to the long-term planning. I remember in 2008, 2006, J.H. Mensah started an effort to develop a long-term plan for the country. He was also looking at possibly a 20-year or 30-year plan. Dr. Butche, during the term, also started the famous 40-year plan. I'm sure you asked me where we are with that, but we'll come to that.
Yes, we'll come to that. Now, I remember for Vision 2020, there was a key reference, just like subsequently all the efforts that have been made to the 7-year development plan of Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. I've been doing some bit of reading and research as well. If you take the Emiratis, you take the rest of Arabia that discovered oil, they seem to have designated various decades over the last century and subsequently the new one that just began post-2000 to undertake certain key developments. And the developments were partitioned sectorially and in phases. If you take what Nkrumah did and subsequently what Vision 2020 should have been, how did we draw on what Nkrumah did, one, two, what the rest of the world was doing, which were developing at the time?
Yeah. Okay. So one of the tragedies that we've had in this country is the discontinuity of plans. I mean, our Fourth Republican era is depleted with the normal development plans that were put together. Only 3 of them saw their successful conclusion. In fact, the one that was prepared in 1961, and then the Champon one, it's a 2-year plan, and then the one by Buzia that saw their completions. Most of them were truncated because of maybe political changes. Some of them were maybe truncated because of resource issues. Indeed, Nkrumah's 7-year plan had suffered because of resource issues. When the plan implementation began, it was going well until we suffered global crisis with the cocoa prices and things, and affected our budgets, and we were not able to implement the plan, and then crisis setting. So we've had a problem of discontinuity of most of our plans that we have for political reasons or the resources. But if you look at all the plans that have been put together, what you see is that our problem has not changed. you see a trend that runs through all the plans, the policy framework, the issues are the same. It just has changed in its wording and format or location.
Just the lexicon.
Yes, that's what you see.
Years.
The issue of sanitation has been with us. I can give you...
You mean they permeate all the plans?
They permeate through all the plans.
Education.
Education, health. And I'll tell you, there are even publications which go way back in the 1960s that talks about Ghana, Accra being dirty. So it's the matter of sanitation is not something that is today, and it runs through all our plans. It is the conceptualization of how you deal with the problem which has changed over the years. Okay. So my point is that why we know what our problem is. Is it not possible to have a common understanding of how we want to deal with the problem on a long-term basis? And that is, for me, the problem that we have as a country. We've not been able to agree among ourselves that we know our problem is sanitation, we know our problem is health, we know our problem is this. Going forward, we want to take 20 years, we want to take 40 years, we want to take 25 years to fix that problem. And this is how we're going to do it. In the first 5 years, we'll do this. In the next 5 years, we'll do this. So I'm happy you were talking about China. And so on. Listen, China has its first attempt at development planning in 1951. Subsequently, they've implemented successively over 13 development plans. You don't see China, you see, because they threw the things away, but they build on it. Every step that you make in development, every little step should lead to the long-term objective that we have. So we have this problem because we have a penchant for throwing away things and starting again, and we waste resources in a way that do not inure to our own benefit.
The Fourth Republic was supposed to be a new dawn for us as a country, to have a certain reflection and perhaps a chosen path to new ways of doing things. We seem to have consolidated the aspect of democratic transitions, maintaining basic human rights and freedoms, but seem to have failed on the Human Development Index. How does the related issue about not having consensus impinged on the ability to implement the Vision 2020, if we take for a start, knowing that is the first development plan in the Fourth Republic?
Yeah, I think there's recognition among all actors, both all political parties, that human resources is important. It's the matter of the suspicions that normally characterize the nature of politics that makes it. I mean, let's even have a conversation about the basic issue of education, the matter of secondary school. How long did it take us to agree, if we have agreed, on the matter of whether we should have 4 or 3 years? It's been back and forth. And it's all because of the nature of politics that we have. From where I sit, my view about why we've not been able to reach consensus is coming from, let me say, two things. First is the nature of our politics. The nature of our politics makes us so suspicious of each other. We can talk about everything. We don't want to continue on what others have done, even though the Constitution requires us to, as much as possible, continue what other. For the fact that somebody say that you take credit for it, so we just don't want to do it. I also think that there's this unnecessary ideological obsession. You know, people get hooked to the ideological issue when the train has left the station. You know, you need to make adjustment to what your ideological, and those kind of ideological obsession tends to influence the leaders that we have in terms of how they see things should be done. And the third thing probably let me add to is the matter of people talks about things that they don't have adequate information about it. And they poison the atmosphere, for instance. And people should get information and be able to educate Ghanaians very well in terms of where we should go in our development path. That's my thoughts.
Knowing that you brought us together when you were at the NDP's National Development Planning Commission, at the time I believe Dr. Nimoy Thompson was the one who was heading that whole initiative. What are the underpinnings of having a national development plan? And if you look at what has transpired in other sections of the world, how does it aid development?
Okay, so let me, Roland, let me backtrack a little bit and give you some basis for it, what we were trying to do.
For the 40-year development
40-year development plan. You know, I think in 2006, when NDPC, you know, we had the mandate to prepare medium-term plans and also help government put together what they call the coordinated plans. So at that time, we prepared the 4-year medium-term plan, and it went to Parliament. And during the debate on the floor of Parliament, Parliament insisted that these short things is becoming too much. Why don't you look at long-term solution to problem, and so that we will cut it in bits and pieces. So we started in 2006. We brought in experts from Legon. We brought in India, who has experience in doing this plan. We put together a very beautiful plan at that time.
You even brought people from India?
Yes. We had experts from India to come and review what we have done. They make very useful input. By 2008, we had some, what you call, draft plan together. And then there was a change in government. But the rigors of transition along the line, we lost, the new government lost track of what to do. It wasn't a priority for them at that time to proceed with it. But that matter kept coming because...
To have a long-term plan?
Yes, because there was a media dialogue that was organized by Joy FM, and I remember that then P.V. Obin was the one who was chairing this conversation. And people were asking questions now, where do we have continuity? How can we have policy consistency? And so decision was taken to say that, listen, we need to give a thought about this long-term plan going forward. But what even make it more critical is the constitution review process. You know, during the constitution review process, the matter of long-term planning was not one of the issues on the table. But in the end, when they were soliciting for views, 2/3 of the population indicated that they want a long-term plan. Indeed, the whole chapter 3 of the constitutional review process was devoted to long-term planning. And the recommendation even coming from that is that they wanted the long-term plan to be binding on successive government. And they wanted the part of the constitution to change to ensure that it's binding on successive government. So we, from NDPC, started the process to do the long-term planning with the hope that the law will change so that to make it binding on successive government. And that is what led to the 40-year plan that we started putting together. And so much work was done in putting that document together. A lot of information in there, which will aid the development of this country, if we pay attention to what is contained in there going forward. I've heard people talk about that 40-year plan without even knowing the content of it. And I think that it will do us a lot of good as a country if we spend time, just look at what's in there and see if there are areas of weaknesses that we can address and put it into use going forward.
Now, how is leadership important? Commitment of leadership important? And then getting the buy-in, whether it's bipartisan or multi-partisan buy-in. I'm asking this because if you look at Maoist China, subsequently the other leaders we've had in China, for example, you look at the Emiratis, you look at the rest of the Arab world subsequently, and what has been done. Leadership is at the forefront of everything, even though the plan is also there.
Yes, I mean, if you talk about, anytime you talk about long-term planning, and you cite those examples, China, what do you call it, Emirates, you talk about, or Singapore, people say that you can't bring that to Ghana because they have long-term leadership. They have benevolence dictators and things like that. So for China, it's a one leader who has been there for a long time. So it's easy to implement the long-term.
One party.
One party kind of thing. Yeah. But the truth of the matter is that you can have a long-term plan even in a multi-party system.
Because the UK and the US
is the system.
We have Denmark. We have
the system you put together to make sure that the checks and balances are there to allow the flexibility that political partisanship allows to do. And we can do that in Ghana. For instance, what we were trying to do with the 40-year long-term plan was that we had made enough provision for flexibility in the system. We were not going to have a long 40-year plan, but the idea is that the 40-year plan was going to be cut into 4-year. And then there was provision that we have made in law that anytime the basic assumption changes, Parliament can trigger any changes or revision of the long-term plan within 10 years. And every 10 years, you can change it. The proposals in the document were not proposals that were going to put you in a very tight corner, but it allows you the flexibility. It's just stated that, for instance, who doesn't want to see a proper sewage system all across the country?
We don't have. Apart from Tema, Dansuma, Sakumono.
Exactly. In the plan.
The new places we have, Committee 25, Dowenya,
exactly.
Kaswa.
In the plan, we had made proposal for a sewage system that is all over the country, that allows a kind of central sewage system, for instance, that allow us to manage our system more effectively.
And even how we even do recycling of human waste.
Exactly.
So it's even more a good resource.
Exactly. And we in the plan has also made proposal in terms of even railway network, how it's linked to all the regions and districts. And we believe that those kind of infrastructure are not things that you can do just 2-3 years or 2 terms of a government to do. I mean, if you are elected as president, at best you have a maximum of 8 years. Somebody needs to continue. So where you left off, how can people take off from where you left off? For instance, if we are proposing that all regions should be linked to a railway network, probably you come as a president, you do maybe 2 regions or 3 regions, and somebody comes, he continue to the next region. And so that is how development is incremental. You build on what others have done. And I think that is what work that we did allow it. So for me, leadership, as we are talking about, leadership need, and I'm appealing to political leadership, that they can do Ghanaians a lot of favor by giving Ghanaians a plan.
Now that plan, you kept talking about how it needs to be binding, and as a result of that, we need to promulgate it into law.
You see, our law has made provision for planning. There are aspects of the law that seems kind of contradictory or not supportive of a long-term plan. For instance, Article 36, Clause 5 says that every president of assumption of office should prepare its own coordinated program. It means that it should prepare its own vision of how you want to, right? In essence, it means that you cannot force the president to continue what you have done, because it says it should prepare its own. Okay? It then means that that part of the Constitution needs to be looked at. And so that is what was made in the Constitution Review, that section needs to be looked at.
Was it that it was ambiguous or contradictory?
It does not, in a sense, support this long-term planning as has been made provision in different part of the law. Okay? The different part of it say, as far as possible, government should continue. That's what it says. That kind of clause gives rooms for a lot of As far as possible, who defines as far as possible? I define as far as possible as the way I understand it, right? So we thought that in order to make the provisions consistent, we needed to review those parts of the law to make sure that, so for instance, the proposal that was made under the constitutional review process was to say that we revise clause, Article 36, Clause 5, to say that successive government will implement the long-term plan, okay? And then also put a flexibility clause somewhere that allow the president to prepare its coordinated program based on the long-term plan. So that is how you link it up. So you allow the president to show you how he wants to implement the long-term plan, okay? You see, the differences in implementing the long-term plan is the how, the mechanics of it. One government will come which may use a different approach to implement it. That is the mechanics of it.
The mechanics of it.
The mechanics of it. But the objective of what you want to achieve should not change.
The structure should be the same.
It should not change. What you want to achieve.
Railway is railway.
Railways is railway. We want to have a national railway.
Connectivity is connectivity.
Connectivity is connectivity.
Whether you want to do monorail or
exactly.
whatever, that's up to
whatever, if you want to use government budget or you want to go and borrow to do that, or whatever instruments you want to do, it's different, right? So I think what we were trying to do is to make sure that once we ensure that we are consistent with the objectives you want to achieve, we don't restrict government in terms of how they want to achieve it.
Our nice phone line, when I come, I'll ask you, how can we get the support, knowing that since the Fourth Republic, we've had NDC and MPP, and so we need a bipartisan approach. Please make sure that you get interactive with us. We have a WhatsApp platform, and so the number is 054010-909. Again, 054010-909. Let us hear from you, and then we'll open the phone lines maybe after I ask this question, and then you can also communicate with us. But now that the two parties seem to have, I don't know whether their differences are not reconcilable, but they seem to have sharp differences in agreeing to many things than the things that they have to agree on. How do we get the bipartisan approach then?
I think that...
Or is it a sine qua non to make sure that we get anything going at all by way of a long-term development plan?
I think that my view about it is that we put leaders there. When I say we, the Ghanaian is the one who elects. It's how much emphasis you put on what you want is what leadership will respond to. So we elect our people. So how much demand?
But we're powerless.
Unfortunately not, because politicians will go to the constituency to make demands, right? To respond to demands, okay? It is how much demands that we make. If we make demand on our politicians that we want a long-term plan, and to be honest with you, I was scandalized as the period leading to the preparation of the 40 years plan when I expected some key civil society organization to stand by the National Development Planning Commission and trumpet the most critical issue of having the plan. They rather became the impediment to
at that time. Perhaps the commission didn't engage them well.
Oh, well, you could say so, but also it's also beholden on them to seek information before disseminating, because you cannot put some false information there. I mean, you need to be equipped to understand what.
So you think part of the problem, apart from the politicians, are civil society?
I will give 60% of the problem to the civil society. One, they didn't have the knowledge. I mean, I was surprised to hear somebody say that technologies is changing very fast, and therefore plan is obsolete. Listen, Stanford University, okay, has put out a strategic plan, 100-year strategic plan to develop artificial intelligence. Stanford University, 100 years. You see, when you prepare plan, you prepare on certain assumptions. And we planners recognize as assumptions changes over time. So anytime your assumption underlying your plan change, you update and revise. I'll give you an example. The Vision 2020, the main objective was achieve a middle income by 2020. Guess what? By 2010, we have achieved a middle income. So if even the Vision 2020 were there, we would have revised the assumptions.
Yeah. Let me go to the phone lines and pick from Wasa. Richard. Richard.
Hello, good morning.
Yeah, where exactly are you calling from Wasa? Wasa is a big area.
All right, Wasa.
Okay. Please go ahead, Richard.
Yes. Please, I want to ask Mr. Kenneth Owusu about what has happened in 2020.
Okay. Thank you. Please, you can also keep calling. We have the numbers just down your screens. And so you can also be part of the conversation. We're discussing Ghana's development plan and why we need it and why so far it looks to be absent.
Yeah, I think in initial stages I mentioned where we are with the Vision 2020, but I think we have moved on from the Vision 2020. We are now trying to develop a new long-term plan. I really don't care how you call it, whether it's 40-year or Ghana at 100 or whatever it is. But the point is that Ghana needs a long-term plan. Whatever steps that we take today should contribute to achieving of a certain long-term objective. And we need to know what that long-term objective is. Listen, if you take Turkey, most of the things Turkey is doing today are part of their strategic long-term 50-year plan. You go to India, these things that India is inviting African leaders to come and do ABCD, it's part of the plan. They're not telling you, but it's part of a plan which they have, how they want to be part of the conversation in an African continent, how they don't want to be left out. China wants to have a plan as to how they want to be part of the conversation in Africa. So we cannot sit there and pretend that things will happen. You see, politicians, as they are always interested in the short-term objective because that is what would win them the vote. But we, as Ghanaians, need to demand that whatever short-term objective that you are taking should contribute to the long-term. So what is the long-term bit that you are looking at?
Nabulo is where Justice is calling from. Justice.
Yes, good morning.
Good morning, Justice. Please go ahead.
Yeah,
you want to contribute to the discussion?
Yes. The long-term development plan is just the best way for Ghana. We have no any other option.
And you are taking this position because?
Yeah, just because the partisan manifesto has never helped us. I think we need to go for long-term development plan. Then we look at what the constitution can do to support that, so that any party that comes to power must toe the line of the people. And the long-term plan must decide that it has to collect the views of the people so that it becomes like the people's plan and not a partisan plan. So that when you're a political party, you can have your own method. How you go about it, fine. But you should be able to use the long-term plan as your guide to take us there. I think that's the way to go about it.
Yeah. Okay. Let's go to Alhaji Binuyuri, who is calling from Savologo. Alhaji, good morning to you.
Yeah. Good morning.
Good morning. Please, your contribution to the discussion. We're discussing Ghana's development plan, why it's needed, and why now it's absent.
I'll tackle it. Ghana development plan. Unless we change our attitudes and do something proper, before we can grow. If we write even this thing today, tomorrow will come out for you. I don't understand how it.
Well, you seem to be fading subsequently, so we'll have to go to Kumasi, where Yusuf is calling from. Yusuf.
Yes, sir. Good morning, sir.
Charlie, good morning, bro. Please, your discussion. Your contribution to the discussion, I have to say.
Sir, please, my contribution is, Ghana, all our problem is the politicians. Because, as you people are saying, the long-term program is what used to benefit them all the time. sometimes when they know that something will benefit the whole nation, they wouldn't want to do it because they want what will benefit them. At the end of the day, if they give you the opportunity to develop and mature, they think that you will come and then take them from their seat. So they are always not willing to do what will benefit the youth of this nation.
Yusuf,
yes,
how do we compel the NDC? Because now it's them, NDC and MPP. How do we compel them to have a buy-in or come and sit at the table and agree on a plan for all of us, so that the next time we know they are not going according to the plan, we know what to do?
Well, sir, I think with what you are discussing now, I think it is time Ghanaians as well as the youth must wake up and then tell the politicians that no, this is what we want. If you don't do them, then we are not going to vote you into power. So we must once again insist on the authorities to, bring out another opportunity for the youth to review the constitution. So that if there are some things in that we are going to change to suit we the citizens, then we do that. Because not until we compel this highly politicians who are at the top level to give us a chance to review the constitution, they are not going to do it. Because they thought they always want to benefit, so they are not going to give us a chance. So I think the opinion leaders, the chiefs, as well as those who can voice out in the public, must help the youth so that we compel the politicians to give us the opportunity again to review the constitution, so that it will see the nation as a whole.
Well, we've done the Constitutional Review Commission, and so that review has been undertaken, and it's part of the report. Subsequently, a white paper was issued, and well, we just haven't seen the implementation of it subsequently. Let's go to our last caller, and from Sefri we have Kwabena. Kwabena, good morning to you. Kwabena? Kwabena? Well, we seem to have lost Kwabena there. But I have this one. It says, whenever I think of Ghana, I become worried. 62 years of independence, and we still have schools under trees. Yes, we do. Well, schools without decks. Yes, we do. Hospitals and clinics without bungalows. Well, typical village of not less than 5 kilometers away from district capitals. And you didn't add your name, but you're worried. This one says, thanks, service personnel have not been paid for November and December. Well, you're adding your concerns there. We can only develop if we change our 4-year term to 8 years. The 4-year term is not the way to go for a country like ours, where everything is politics. Africa, Bia, and that's from Ahafo. And we have the national flag should represent all political parties in this country, for it will help us to see ourselves as one people with a common agenda. That's your view there. And these are all perfect initiatives. But the question is, when will it get implemented? Let us all get involved in bringing ideas. And this one is asking, we cannot have a long-term plan for the country when parties introduce manifestos and we hold them to their implementation. How strong and independent is even the NDPC to front and spearhead the process in Tiamwa?
Yeah,
how independent is the end?
Okay,
when you were there.
Yeah, allow me to comment on this comment before I come to how independent. You see,
the political party.
No, the manifesto. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with manifesto. Manifestos will continue to be part of the governance process, or politics of this country. But manifestos are not substitutes for long-term plan. In fact, they are vehicle for achieving what you have set up. And I keep telling my friends in the political parties that when you have a long-term plan, about 80% of your problem is solved. You're not going to tell the people new policies or new things. You're going to tell them how you're going to solve, how you're going to implement what is
in the plan.
Exactly, because most of the...
So you're saying the manifesto is just to be a guide?
Yeah.
As to how you intend to actualize what is in the plan?
Exactly. It makes life easy for you. You not go and promise things you cannot deliver. Because I have sat at the commission where we've analyzed manifesto, and we've seen that a lot of the proposal in the manifesto has some deficit when it comes to in terms of achieving, right? The analytical basis for those propositions is not solid, and so sometimes we make recommendation as to the way you want to do A, B, C, D. we give you options and what the options are. So we sit at the commission there, and then we make rigorous analysis on how each sector is interconnected with each other, and how every step that you are taking today can contribute to the long term, right? Manifesto does not have that rigorous thing. It's short term of hearing people say we want water, we want this. As to whether water is what they need, probably if you have provided them something, it will lead them to be able to have the water kind of thing. That is what at the commission we used to do. When I talk about independence, the Constitution has clearly articulated the independence of the commission. In fact, the commission is part of the entrenched provision. Nobody can change anything in the commission unless you go to referendum. So
it means we have everything in law for us to develop.
We do, Roland. We do. We do. And we have great guys at the National Development Planning Commission who do a lot of thinking, solid guys who are very analytical. If you had opportunity to look at, recently I had somebody from Malawi, what do you call the executive director of Malawi Planning Commission, and he came to see what Ghana is doing, and he was so fascinated about what the commission is doing. So I think there are good technical people there. We need to take opportunity to make sure that at least we had a plan to guide the future development. Well, let's, there's something very frightening as this country that we need to pay attention to.
Which is?
We're wasting our human resource. Young people in the streets, they are selling dog chain. We are wasting their talent. We did analysis in 2015, 2016. We noticed that the transition from primary school to JSS, we dropped as much as 6.
Of our development. Thank you very much. Mr. Kenneth Owusu is a development planning expert. Until recently was with the National Development Planning Commission. Indeed, I've been at various sittings in which he's been one of the key speakers because he was with the National Development Planning Commission. And thank you very much for this insightful discussion. Yeah. And looking at the calls also that came into the studio, a lot of our viewers were also following. We're grateful. Yeah. Do enjoy your Christmas.
Thank you.
Merry Christmas to you and the rest of your family.
Merry Christmas to you.
Yeah.